Oftentimes what you want the most is the most difficult thing to have. Think about it. Would your dream be to have $1 or $1 million? Probably the $1 million. And that's the harder thing to do. Yet, most people spend all their time doing easy stuff that everyone else can also do, like watching anime, playing video games, hanging out with friends, checking social media, gotta read that book, dropshipping, online course. I did all these things in the past, and you're probably doing them now. But why? I think you only really have two options in life. You're either going for depth of experience, which sacrifices the breadth of experience, or you're going for the breadth of experience, which sacrifices the depth of experience. You're either digging the hole that you want to dig, or you're just going around digging all the surface dirt. Which do you want? Well, I'm going to tell you how to go deep. And the short answer is prioritization. But since you're here, I think you want to know the specific steps. So I have a 3-step method that I use pretty much on a daily basis that I use to go deep so I can actually reap the rewards of what I'm doing. And I think it's something that you can start applying today, and with a little bit of practice, you might be able to use it for nearly all tasks in your life, no matter how difficult. But before the steps, why should you prioritize in the first place? In my mind, I think prioritization is kind of like freedom. Since you're focused on something, it frees you up and allows you to be not tied down by all the things that you don't actually want to do. Because if you prioritize correctly, you're essentially doing what you want to do the most, the highest quality thing you could possibly be doing. So why would you be worried about doing anything else? Why would you want to do anything else? Yeah, at some point in your life, you gotta explore a little bit to figure out which hole do you actually want to dig. But then eventually, once you find that, there's no need to really pay attention to anything else other than what you actually want to do. And last, I think the only way you can really appreciate or feel satisfied about the work that you've done is if you stop chasing new stuff. So prioritization sounds great. So why don't people prioritize? Why don't you prioritize? And I think it's very simple. It's because fear of missing out or fear of commitment. People are afraid, or you're probably afraid, if you commit to something, that there might be something else out there that's better, something else that you could be missing out on. So you go around and you start exploring a whole bunch of stuff. Like say in your university, there's people that go around and try all these different classes, but deep down they actually already know what they want to do. Or there's something like you're always going out with friends on the weekend because you're afraid that they might be doing something new or fun or interesting, but there's a project in the back of your mind that you've always wanted to work on, and then you know that you want to do, but since that you feel like you're missing out, you go and do the other stuff anyways, and every single time you're like, oh, I should have just worked on the project. But fear of commitment or fear of missing out is very bad. If you know anything about the stock market, you'll know about FOMO, and you know that FOMO makes people go broke from their money. So FOMO in the context of your life will make you go broke in terms of satisfaction. You go around, go digging all the surface dirt, but never going deep enough to reap the rewards of what you actually want. So putting it simply, for why prioritize, it is why do the stuff that you don't want to do, and for why don't people prioritize or why don't you prioritize is fear of commitment or fear of missing out, FOMO. So that leads into what are the actual steps? What are these 3 steps that I've talking about? So prioritization, I think, can be in 2 ways. It is micro prioritization or like macro prioritization. So things that have a deadline or no deadline, or sort of daily tasks. If you're in school, it'd be like doing some sort of assignment has a hard deadline. And it's quite simple to understand, versus something like, oh, I want to be successful in life, I want to make $1 million, I want to be rich, whatever. That's sort of more like a life goal, has no real deadline. It's like a very broad thing, right? The same 3 steps apply to both, except the macro prioritization thing has just a little bit more to it. So we'll just start with the micro and then go from there. So for micro prioritization, I want to use an example of getting a job, and you can think about it like also applying for university, because they're both very similar things. So when you start to try to get a job, you'd be like, oh, like, what do I need to get a job? Like, what I need to get into university? And you'd be like, oh, well, I need a resume, I need a cover letter. If it's university, it would be something like a personal statement. I think that's what it's called. And then you also need to prepare for the interview. And I guess for university, you don't have to do that. But these are all the things that you basically need to do, and you'll think about this. And then you take those different tasks and you go into the 3 different steps. The first one would be like, oh, do I actually need to do these things? And you'll evaluate it in terms of importance and also urgency. So if you take a look at urgency, you'd be like, okay, well, I need to apply at some point, but I need the resume and cover letter first. So like these are most urgent. Prepare for the interview, I have to do that after I apply. So like these are most urgent, and then it's this and this. Very simple. And in terms of importance, like this is max importance because you have to apply, or like you're not going to get a job. You're not getting, like, if you don't apply somewhere, like you're not getting there. And of course, the resume is absolutely necessary to actually apply. The cover letter might be optional, maybe less important. And I guess you need to pass the interview, at least for a job. So like that's maximum importance as well. You keep all these things in mind and you just rank them quickly, and don't spend too much time trying to put different numbers to it and stuff like that, because it's really not necessary. Just do this really quickly and you move on to the second step, and you'd be like, okay, taking that into account, how long is this stuff going to take? And think about difficulty, because this is going to affect the time estimate that you have. If it's something that's super easy, you'd be like, okay, I know how to actually do this. It's just gonna take like 1 day. For something super difficult, you'd be like, oh, it might take 2 days, it might take 4 days, maybe a little bit longer, maybe a little bit less. Not really sure if it's something really difficult, right? And just keep that in mind as well. And you'd be like, okay, with the urgency that I have and the fact that I think it'll take like maybe a day or two, whatever, how long, am I actually able to get it done within the time frame? So you'll be like, should this be done now? Should this be done later? Or do I have to go and try to like push it back or change up the task, cut things out so I can actually hit the deadline? If it is due later or you could do now, then that's fine. You could go into the third step. If it needs to be pushed back or edited because you can't hit the deadline, then that essentially will become the task. And with that, you move to the third step, which is what else do you need to do? In this case, I already have it all written down, and you'll probably have it all written down too. But then you want to exclude all the stuff that you need to edit or push back, as I mentioned, because then, like let's say you can't get the resume done in time because there's like an application deadline or something like that. Well, is there like a late application deadline, or can I find a template somewhere to speed up my time? Any way that I can actually hit the deadline or push it back. But anyways, you would list out all those tasks and think about, okay, what is the most important urgent one? And in this case, it would be resume. That has to be done absolutely first. It is also the most important. So it is like the highest in terms of these metrics. And if you had multiple things that were like maxed out in both importance and urgency, let's just use the cover letter, for example. Let's say you had to do both of these at some point. You just pick the one that is more difficult to do. And you would do that because something with the dopamine system. I'm not going to explain the very specifics, but if you do the most difficult thing first, it'll essentially make everything after, it's sort of like a domino effect, become easier, because like the dopamine that you get from the first task will carry over to the next one and you'll be able to just get it done easier. And then of course you can just, now that you figured all that out, you've done all your prioritization, you're like, okay, I need to do the resume, you just go and do it, and you forget about all the other things until you finish that. So quite simple. And now moving on to the macro prioritization. So these are things like life goal type things, no real deadline. And I want to use an example of becoming successful. I think that is a lot of people's life goal, like becoming successful. And the way I define success, and maybe you do too, maybe a little bit differently, it would be like so successful in whatever topic, problem, or something that you've created so much value, have so much value built up that you're able to go and do like sacrificial things for other people, to help other people. So it's like you've been very successful in creating value, like things that are good for both you and other people. So you create value, you've stored all that up, and now you have basically excess success, excess value that you can just give to others that has no real clear benefit to yourself. You're just purely helping people because you're now able to, because you're so successful. And we use that as the example. So we got 2 extra steps for the macro prioritization, and that is endure the suck and just keep going. For endure the suck, this is like super important right here. So you absolutely have to do this. So how do you do this? And or what does it mean? What it means is you have to be able to endure the negatives of whatever life goal that or whatever macro prioritization thing goal you have. So in this case, if it's be successful in like X problem group, whatever, if you, for example, liked programming, you liked video editing, or you like doing business, let's say you like all these things and you think you could be successful in all these different things, but it's like, which hole do you actually want to dig, right? Which one do you actually want to go deep in? Because you can't do everything. So this step of enduring the suck is actually figuring out which hole you actually want to dig. And you do this by making sure the negatives of what you're doing are not really negatives to you. And why you do this is because the positives might be positives, and there might be positives in all these things. That's why you're interested in them. But over time, it's the negative things that wear you out, the negative things that like burn you out, because they'll like chip away at your willpower over time. But for you, if the negative things are not really negative, then basically like the positive is positive and the negatives are like neutral, let's say, then you'll always be good, and you never get worn down. And you figure this out by looking at other people. What do they think sucks? And then, do you think it sucks? And that makes sure it's something that you can consistently work on. And the second step of just keep going. So with the same example, so like becoming successful, let's say, you'll probably come to the conclusion, if you want to be that successful, is you have to start some business, or at least be part of some kind of business, because a business in and of itself, like it has to create value, and creating tons and tons of value is the only way you can really be super successful, right? So you'll just keep on doing things like that. You'll keep on going. You'll be like, oh, I need to be part of a business. How do I do it? Like, what is the very next step? You find the very next step and you just go and do it. Keep on making progress. And every single time you make progress, you're like, oh, like I can see where I need to go next. Let's just go do that. And you're like one step at a time. And the reason why you do this is because a lot of people say you need to set a deadline or something like that, but it's really hard for something like this to have a deadline. But if you keep on making progress and you make good progress and you start to like accelerate, let's say, I think eventually you'll reach to where you want to go if you're going in the right direction. If you prioritize correctly, like you use the different steps here, I think you will be going in the right direction. So to summarize, it's just like you figure out, okay, how important is this thing? How urgent is it? Can I actually get it done in the right time frame? And is my estimate good? Is it like too difficult, not difficult? Taking all those things into account, you list out everything. You're like, okay, what is the next thing that I should do? And what is also the most difficult in terms of like these two, right? And then you just go and do it. Very simple. And then for the macro prioritization stuff, simply just make sure that is something that you can endure the negatives for and keep going. So now you know how to prioritize both in a micro and macro sense, so you can go deep enough on what you actually want to do to reap the rewards and not waste time on anything else. But you might have realized that there's actually a lot of different tasks between the surface start and then the goal or the rewards that you're actually trying to get at the end. How do you keep all of that organized so nothing falls through the crack? Well, you can watch this video here where I talk about my productivity method that captures everything from your life vision all the way down to the daily tasks and also keeps you on track being productive for over 90% of your day.